Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Great Books Lectures. Before we start, I want to thank the CoLab, as always, video production, the marketing team, for helping make these presentations possible. This is our second of the year. We got one more coming up next month, and we're looking forward to it. Again, thank you. I'm Michael Carriger. I'm an assistant professor in English, and along with Professor Maureen Fitzpatrick, we're either to blame for these or to thank for these. We've organized this series. So again, thank you always for supporting, and please keep coming out. You can also see our past lectures on our YouTube channel. To begin, Chef Chrystal Tatum is an associate professor and the apprenticeship coordinator for hospitality management here at Johnson County Community College. She began as an adjunct with the college in 2018 and became full-time in 2020. Chrystal holds an associate's degree in chef apprenticeship from JCCC. In fact, I think this space, has a memory for her, and a bachelor's of science in management from the University of Phoenix. Chrystal is also involved with the American Culinary Federation as the president of the Greater Kansas City Chefs Association and as the apprenticeship chair, board of trustees member for the ACF Educational Foundation. Here on campus, she serves as the business division alternate for Ed Affairs, a facilitator for Master Teacher Workshop, a Safe Zone facilitator, and she co-coaches the JCCC culinary team. She's also served as part of a program review or two. Prior to her work here at JCCC, Chrystal served as director of LaCole Culinary School. In addition, she has worked in the culinary industry at, ready? Webster House, 40 Sardines, the Kauffman Foundation, the Nelson Art Gallery, Indian Hills Country Club, 1924 Maine, and the Stowers Institute. And those are just what she listed. There might be others, we don't know. Outside of her time at the college, Chrystal has a passion for gardening, culinary foraging, and herbalism, cooking, hobbit hiking, general frolicking in the woods, reading, board and dice games, and exploring new restaurants. And I do believe that is the first time I've used the word frolicking in all of our time with Great Books, but glad to do it. Today's lecture is going to cover Spencer Johnson's Who Moved My Cheese, published in 1998. We asked Chrystal why she chose the title, and she said this: "The book had a profound impact on the way I approached change and my attitude towards change. It is something everyone can benefit from in these times." Agreed. Friends, Chrystal Tatum.
Well, now that I'm thoroughly embarrassed, because I didn't realize it was going to be verbatim when I gave him those answers. For the record, hobbit hiking is not the kind where you're trying to get to the summit. It's where we meander and we have snacks, because that's very important to hiking. So, as Michael mentioned, it's very surreal for me to be in here giving this talk right now, because I'm pretty sure my very first class was right here in this building, because this used to be where we had culinary. I graduated over there somewhere. We had culinary team back there. So it's very, I don't know, it's come full circle. I'm now standing here teaching at the place where I first started learning, the thing that I'm very passionate about. But as with my book today, things change. This is a whole new space. It's a whole new endeavor in here in the CoLab. So I'm very excited to tell you guys about Who Moved My Cheese. It's a little silly. I don't expect ever to be the normal when it comes to a lot of things around here. Our department, our division, us as chefs, we tend to be the outliers, but here we are. So come on this weird adventure with me. So why this book? I was a very young teacher and the youngest chef, and suddenly became the director of my former school. Actually, two of my colleagues were my colleagues there as well. And they they watched me struggle and fight it and try to figure out this brave new world I was in. And my mentor at the time said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you this book. I think you should read it. It might help you." And I was like, okay. He's like, "It's real short. I know you like books. Generally, when I'm reading, it is not things like this. It is ridiculous epic fantasy and nonsense to let me have fun with my escapism or cookbooks." this book actually helped me learn to love more things like this, and has since been the gateway for other opportunities for me to learn. But I read it, and I came back to him and I said, that was sneaky. And he goes, yeah, well, you like cheese. I'm like, yeah, I do. And from that point forward, it was still hard and I still struggled, but my approach to it changed. And that's really what I kind of want to give you guys in this moment, is an opportunity for you to read something that might help you in the future, because I know we say death and taxes are the only thing that's constant in life, but I really think there should be a third, and that it's change. We live somewhere where we literally watch the seasons change. We watch tiny humans become big humans. It's our entire life is change. And how we approach that impacts us greatly. So that is why I chose this book rather than some weird epic fantasy that may or may not resonate with people. This was something when Michael approached me, I'm like, okay, this one for sure everyone can get something out of, even if you've already read it. I ended up rereading it now over a decade later and yet again having those moments where I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do better in this area. So beyond that, it has gained some accolades. It has been at the New York Times bestseller list for 53 weeks, which is a pretty good run. I didn't even put all the stats on here. If you pull it up, there's a ridiculous amount of stats of how many times this book has been sold, who all has published it, how many languages it's published in. So it's still relevant for today. It's an easy read. One of my friends joked that it was their size font. I'm like, yeah, it's a real easy read. So I'm not asking you to do a hard one either. So more importantly though, because I am a chef, I have to go with this angle. Why do we love cheese? I know this man loves cheese. When asked if he could only eat one food for the rest of his life, you know what he said? Cheese. Why else do we love cheese? It's salty. It melts. Okay. Say that again. Tons of options, right? It's decadent. What are our favorite cheesy foods? Grilled cheese? What's your favorite cheese for grilled cheese?
Sharp, but not extra.
Sharp cheddar, but not extra. Okay, can't get too extra. What if I made you grilled cheese with Gouda?
I would love it.
You would eat it? Havarti? So if I changed the cheese on you, you would still like it?
Yes.
I'm going to be cheesy today, sorry.
Till you get to Limburger.
Till you get to Limburger. Okay, no stinky cheese. So again, cheese is something we love. So this book is starting out with something that we love paired with something that makes a lot of us kind of cringe. Do we love change? Who loves change? Okay, some. I think there's instances where we love change for sure. Not a love. No babies with dirty diapers. But they do love it. You are right. So when we look at this, we don't love change, but we do love cheese. So he did a good job in choosing his subject matter, I think. So when we look at cheese, how does milk become cheese? Because again, food nerd. So we start with milk. That milk is then heated up. So it gets put under some fire, usually in a big copper tub. They sit there and start agitating it, and new elements are added. We add things like rennet or enzymes, flavorings. So it starts to do what? Change. Trying to so it causes the proteins in it to start clumping together. What happens when things start to change around you? What do you do? Do you go run to the people who are safe? Be like, oh my gosh, things are changing. What are we gonna do? Okay. And then curds are formed. And then they get cut. And then they get separated. So everything gets wild and crazy, right? The poor milk doesn't know what's happening. Then we take that curd, and we add some salt to it, because salt makes things way better. It really does. And then it's pressed. So a lot of times they're put under pressure. They're then maybe washed with salt and aged and put into caves. All the milk doesn't even know what's happening. It was just riding along in a cow or a sheep or a goat, and now suddenly it's in a cave. Okay? So it's all uniquely finished into this beautiful, lovely thing that we call cheese. But it has to go through all these steps and all this process to get there. Much like us as humans, we have to go through a lot sometimes when change happens. And there's times when we don't like it. There's times when it's hard. So how we react to that is what this book is all about. So there's your tiny cheese lesson, because I have to. So what does this all have to do with the book? In this book, there's a maze, there's cheese, there's mice, and there's people. It's a very simple, silly little parable about silly little things, talking about something that for a lot of people is very scary. I teach every day, yet today I was so nervous about this dang presentation, and everybody around me was like, you're gonna do fine, you're gonna do great. But it was something different. It was a change in my normal routine. It's talking about something that I don't always feel like an expert on. If you'd asked me just to talk about cheese, I'm fine. But when I'm talking about a book, even though I've read this multiple times and lived it, it's scary, because sometimes change is scary. I'm doing something out of my norm. So when we look at this book, the summary is kind of looking at the different pieces. So each piece represents part of the parable. We look at the maze. This maze is our main setting. It's where all the action happens. It's a representation of our life. When we look at the plot, these characters are finding the cheese. The cheese is what sustains them. It is, without it, they get hungry and they get weak and they're tired. Okay? So we all have to find the cheese that's in our bellies to sustain us every day. So in life, we may have different things that represents. And then there's the conflict. The cheese goes away. Someone moved the cheese. It disappears. And everyone is aflutter. Then we have our characters. So we have our two mice. Their names Sniff and Scurry, because what else are you going to name some mice besides Chip and Dale? And then we have Him and Haw, which is the two little people. So this book came under some fire for using that term, ironically enough. And it's one of the things that we see as times change, right? This book was written in 1998. That would have been perfectly acceptable. Now it's not. So then we have our theme, which is obviously adapting to change. So let's get into the different pieces. So when we look at our maze, there's all the normal things that they run into. There's different stations in it where the cheese is. And during this time, they're getting lost. They're having switchbacks. They find different cheese stations. Some of them are full to the brim, some of them are empty. It's all a conundrum. So when we look at that, when we look at life, there's different issues we have to navigate all the time. Who's had something new in this week that they've had to navigate in their life? Everybody has, in some form or fashion. There are personal changes and professional changes. So this book not only applies to your professional life, I think it applies a lot of times to your personal life, more so in a lot of ways, because things happen. Your job might be a constant, but your life might be an upheaval. And then all the cheese stations represent new opportunities and new possibilities. So we can either see these changes in our lives as new possibilities, as an opportunity to grow and learn, or we can be stuck where we are in the maze and lost forever. All right, when we look at the plot, so when they're talking about finding cheese, they're talking about finding the things in life that bring us fulfillment. A lot of the times it's hearkened to desire. So in the story, the mice, the people, they're trying to find that which fulfills them. So in our day-to-day life, it might be one thing. In our job, what fulfills you in your job? Say what? money, very literal interpretation of the cheese. We're making that cheddar, right? Sometimes it's a purpose. I know for me, seeing my students succeed every single day, that is what keeps me coming back and doing what I do. Helping people understand and grow in their lives is fulfillment for me. I know we all have our reasons why we work here. Sometimes it is as simple as, hey, I have to pay the bills. Then there's the higher level needs. At the end of the day, finding that purpose, that desire, are you going to find it if you just stay in one spot doing the same thing that you've always done? Do you think that's going to be a fulfilling life? Probably not. It's going to be a long day. So one day when the cheese is gone, we are stuck with an unknown. The characters don't know why. They don't know how. They don't know if it's coming back. How often in our life are we in a situation where suddenly everything has changed and we're not sure why? I know we've all been there. I have. There might even be reasons when we know why, but the change has still happened. We have moved to our thing. So no matter what, your choice is either to figure out what you're going to do next or stay stuck where you are. And our characters choose different paths. So, Sniff and Scurry are two mice. They represent adaptation. They represent thinking on your feet, responding quickly. When the cheese disappears from the first station, they're like, all right, let's lace up these runners and let's go. And they pop off and they find more cheese. And they're just living their high life, hanging out, eating cheese, being like, man, I wonder where those people went. I know for me personally, there's been times in my life where I watched this happen. I have seen colleagues who are like, I'm not going to use that new piece of technology. I don't ever want to touch that. And then suddenly, they're required to. And all of us who've been like, yes, okay, we're going to use the new technology. You're moving along. I know as a student, how often do things change for you guys? And suddenly, I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to have to adapt, or I'm not going to pass this class. Happens to all of us. So Sniff and Scurry, if anything, can be our examples. Say, hey, when they find the new cheese, what do? They don't sit down and throw their sneakers in the back. They tie their sneakers around their neck so that the next time something happens, they're ready to go. Him and Haw, so our two people in this situation, do very different things. First, they get angry. They stick their heads in the sand. They're like, we're going to come back here to this cheese station, and we're going to stay here. It's going to come back. It's going to be okay. Nothing's going to change. And they do that again and again and again. Then suddenly, they start thinking, well, what happens if there's never any cheese here? What happens if I don't ever do anything? Like, no. They go into denial. Like, no, we're just going to stay here. This is where it was. I built my entire mountain on this being where I find my cheese. You know those people who've stayed in one place too long, done the same thing too long, not changed ever, and now they're sitting there in denial because life is passing them by? That's Hem and Haw. So for us, we have to look at it as, okay, I can either sit here and be stuck, or eventually Haw decides I have to move on. He's like, I'm hungry. I need some cheese in my day. So he starts getting out there, and it's scary. He's lost. He can't find his way back. At one point, he's like, I just have to go back. I have to go back to where Hem is. And he goes back, and he sees him just getting more and more weak and worse. And it's bad. And he's like, no, I have to forge on. So he eventually finds another cheese station in this maze. and there's a little bit of cheese. There's some crumbs of cheese. He's like, oh man, there was cheese here. I didn't move fast enough. Somebody already ate it. And then eventually he catches up to Sniff and Scurry. Yeah, Sniff and Scurry. I almost call him Scratch. And they find the mother load of cheese. There's different kinds of cheese that he's never tasted. It's amazing, right? His mind is blown. And so he, of course, was like, yeah, I'm going to eat some cheese. And then he thinks about his friend him, who's still back there hungry. So he starts drawing a path, and he goes back. He's like, hey, man, there's cheese. Come with us. And him's like, no, I'm staying right here. This is where my cheese is. And he refuses to come. And so he just keeps going further into denial, while the other three are off having a high old time with their cheese. So our themes. When it comes down to it, change is inevitable. There's very few things in life that stay static, and even those, I would argue, probably change at times. How many of us went to school and had an Apple IIe? Who knows what that is? Say what? That was the computer that we all played Oregon Trail on. See? Thanks, Allison. Thanks for the assist. So we have to understand that adaptation and understanding that we need to change is our choice. It's a very personal choice sometimes, but understanding that it is a choice. You either choose to stay where you are or you choose to move, in the metaphoric and the literal sense. So we have to be flexible. One of the big themes is start noticing things. How many times have you looked outside and seen the weather start to change? We have this skill. We notice changes in our environment because they directly affect us. Like, hey, maybe I need to grab an umbrella today. Oh, it might snow. I need to set my alarm early so I can clean off my car. We already do this in multitude of ways, but when we look at our careers and our personal choices, a lot of the times we ignore when things are changing. And we stay where we are because it's safe and it's warm and cozy. But I would challenge you to look at life just like you do the weather. Because how much can we change the weather? None. So there's points in your life where you can't change things either. So you can either choose to observe them and make informed choices, like grabbing your umbrella, or you can choose to ignore them and have to react when things get real wild. So you take responsibility for your own success. Every day we make a choice to do the things that we do. Sometimes things are out of our control, yes. But at the end of the day, we're responsible for the choices that we make and how we move forward with that. And if you have a goal in mind and you have things that you want to accomplish in your life, then it's up to you really to make that happen. You have people who help you along the way. You have people who support you. But the inevitable is that it has to be a conscious decision on your part to make those successful moves. Persistence in the face of challenges. We have all been there where we had to do that thing that just felt like an enormous task that we couldn't get to, and we've had to break down and make those choices to persist. I know it's not the easiest part of this, but if Haw had stayed in that same cheese station, he would still be sitting there waiting for cheese to come and magically appear. There's a lot of times in life when we're forced to make change because of outside factors. Either I can choose to just dwell on that outside factor and blame it and get mad at it, or I can persist through the really ugly bits and come out the other side having learned a new skill, having gained knowledge. All of these pieces, all this persistence isn't for naught. It's the currency that change pays. It can be scary. And you have to get past that scary and understand that the worst thing that could happen to you probably isn't going to happen. There's a lot of stuff that happens up here where you psych yourself out. I started doing it this morning. But if you refuse, you'll be stuck and you'll suffer. Nobody likes suffering. Okay, so your tips and takeaway. You have to be able to laugh at yourself. I'm the first to tell you that I will trip and fall, and I will be the first one to start laughing about it. Allison's shaking her head because she knows and she has seen me do it. I think there's a lost art to being able to laugh at yourself, especially as professors. We take ourselves so seriously. We're supposed to be this wise person imparting our knowledge. But we're just humans. Far too often, I think most of society has lost the ability to laugh at themselves, and it's a skill that would benefit many people. If you can look at your actions, realize you made a mistake, laugh about it, and move on, you're going to be highly more adaptable in this world than most people. Embrace new opportunities. I would encourage everyone, rather than looking at changes in your day-to-day as an obstacle, as a thing to overcome, what if it's an opportunity? I've had many times in my life where something was presented to me and it was scary. I'm like, okay, this is a real scary thing, and it's gonna suck for a bit. But if I do it, it's gonna put me 3 steps ahead of where I was and closer to the goal that I want to be at. So once you get past the scary, who had to give a speech in high school? Did you die? No. Were you terrified? I was. Some of you were, some of you might not have been. But I always go back to that. Like one of my friends always jokes and they're like, but did you die? I'm like, no. It's like, well, then what's the big fuss? I'm like, fine. Okay, I didn't die. Okay. If you embrace these opportunities, even though they're scary, and you get past it, you're going to learn more in the long run and have those pieces to grow on when more change gets thrown at you, because it's going to happen. And there's always new cheese just beyond your fears. Doing this today was something that I don't normally do. I was nervous as heck, but I'm here, I'm doing it, and it helps me become a better presenter because it challenges me, makes me go back to the things that I knew that maybe I haven't done for a long time. I think there's always some value in that. And part of change can also be revisiting things that maybe you could have done differently and try to do better in the future. So, it's a great little book. It's not a hard read. It profoundly changed my outlook on when I get presented with new material. Are there still moments where I personally will sit there and dig my heels in and have a moment? Of course, I'm a human. But at the end of the day, if that's a moment instead of a season, that's huge. So I would challenge everybody, read the book. It's short. You can borrow mine. It's very silly, but everyone will take something different from it. I had a note of like 25 things that I wanted to be like, I'm going to impart this. And then I realized, no, there's some pieces, because everybody who reads this is going to take something slightly different from it. This is what I took. I hope that you guys see value in it and can use it for your lives.
We do have time for some questions. We'd ask that you use the microphone for both the recording and also those who are with us on Zoom. Do we have any questions?
How has your reading of it changed from the first time you read it to the last?
The first time I read it, it was very much slap in the face, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm being a turd. Well, because when my boss told me about it, right, he's like, just read it. It won't even take you a day. I know how much you read. I'm like, fine. And he gave it to me, and I fought it for a little bit. And then one Sunday, I'm like, ugh, just read it. And I literally did come back and be like, okay, I see you, I hear you. Reading it again, especially now, and I read it and I listened to it this time, it was so different because other things obviously jumped out at me. And I had those moments where I was like, oh, you did not follow your own advice in that situation. Maybe you need to reevaluate your own things. A lot of introspection. Whereas last time it was like, okay, I get your point. But I will say it's going to be one that I'm going to read again in 10 years. Because if, once a decade, help yourself out, learn something about yourself.
Did Spencer Johnson write any other books, or is this it?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, he wrote a ton of books. He did like the 1 Minute Manager. There's a whole, if any of those little short 1990s management books, probably half of them were written by this guy. I think a lot of people have probably read his work. I don't know. Has anybody in here obviously not read this book? Okay. I'm a little surprised. Because there's some people who you'll walk up to and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I read that, and da-da-da. And then other people just look at me like I'm funny, so.
Chrystal, you work with young chefs so much. As an outsider, it would seem to me that a kitchen has a lot of things that stay the same. You've got service tonight, you got service tomorrow night, you got brunch, you got service. But then there are all sorts of opportunities for change. What do you see as the dynamic or the value of this book for, say, young chefs?
I think you'd be surprised at how many young chefs like their routine and don't like change. Our industry forces you to change, oftentimes on a dime. If you have a dish and lo and behold, the asparagus didn't come in, you're making a change right then. For chefs, I think the biggest is that you can't stop learning, you can't stop growing, because our industry is never going to stop growing or changing. There's things that we learned 20, 30, 40 years ago that were not even thought about in today's. Molecular gastronomy was not even a precursor at that point. Cornstarch was top of the line then, let alone when we're sitting here trying to figure out ratios for, ice cream stabilizers and whatnot. And that really comes back to one of the things that I do tell culinary students every semester. It's like, you're going to teach me things. I'm going to teach you things. You're going to learn stuff from your other students. You're going to learn things at work. All of it is valid because there's more than one way to slice an onion, right? None is better than others. There's going to be things you prefer. There's going to be things that you like better, that you think a customer is going to like better. At the end of the day, we're trying to sell food to make money. Yes, the art of it is wonderful, but we're trying to teach you guys how to be successful chefs. And I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, the successful chef makes the money. So it doesn't matter all day long. If you absolutely love to, make your soup this certain way, but your chef says differently, guess what? You're making it the chef's way. And there might be probably a reason for that. And someday when you're the chef, that's how you can make it. But until then, you gotta do what you need to do, so.
So you touched a little bit on hem and haw's relationship. Could you elaborate on the dynamic when you see that change is necessary, but someone else might not?
Oof. I think it depends on your dynamics with the people, right? If Chef Nick, if he and I were sitting there and I'm like, you're not seeing this, I would just tell him, right? Chef Reed, same. because I know that they are open to that possibility. In the book, Ha could have talked to him all day long about everything, but they weren't changing. I think you have to take a moment to realize when you have a receptive audience versus an audience that's never going to listen to you. And there's ways to persuade people, obviously, depending on your relationship with them, depending on your position. If I'm trying to tell someone something that they don't want to hear, they're not going to hear it. It doesn't matter how persuasive I am or how much good evidence I give, if they've made up their mind, and that's how, in the book, that's how it was. Him had made up his mind that this was the hill he was going to die on. Don't be him. If you're trying to bring someone to your way of thinking, or you need to point out that there's change happening, you do that through tactful means. Or if it's someone who you have, a very firm relationship with, you can always say, hey, this is happening. We have to adapt. Let's work on this together. You can be a person who supports another through change. We've all had those people. I know you've had some chefs that didn't want to see change happen. And sometimes you have to accept that you can't change others. They have to choose to grow themselves.
Other questions?
So before reading the book and after reading the book, would you say you definitely had a change in how you personally respond to change? And
Oh, yeah. Totally.
What do you think your favorite method is for responding to change?
Favorite method? Oh, I don't know that I've ever thought about it that deeply. I tend to be pretty literal when it comes to some stuff. So for me, it's like, okay, this is happening. That's not to say I've totally fought change. There's been times where I will fight it. Man, I don't know if I have like a favorite method. So I know that's a terrible answer. I've always been of the mind of, well, there's things I can impact and there's things I can't. I can control how I handle things, how I respond to it, but can I control how, it comes to me? No, not really. I think it's about acceptance more than having like a theory or a way. It's about accepting what you cannot control. Because at the end of the day, that's where most of our frustration comes from. If my boss tells me I must do X, Y, and Z, but I'm like, man, I don't want to do that, or I think this is dumb, that doesn't help me get X, Y, and Z done, right? That just makes me miserable. So I can be like, man, this is gonna suck, and go through it and do it. But what's the point in sitting here making yourself miserable, fighting things that you can't change? Now, there are things in life that we should fight for to change, right? We have that. That's a whole different level.
Other questions?
Chris?
Have you found it easier to accept new change?
Oh, for sure. The reason I went to my boss before when I was like, okay, I get it, was because it smacked me in the face. I was being stubborn about, at that time, I was being stubborn about how I was managing people. I'm like, no, they should do it this way. I'm like, no, we just have to get the thing done. Because I was a young manager, it was the first time I had that level of responsibility for people who were older than me and all very opinionated. And it was one of those moments where my boss was trying to subtly be like, hey, there's another way. You can try a different way. And after I did, I was like, okay, I get this. We don't have to start World War III over silverware. Okay, got it.
All right. Thank you, Chrystal.